Welcome back everybody to Forza Horizon 5, and today we're taking a look at the newly released car pack for the Fast X film. The Fast X car pack essentially. And this features 5 cars from that film, although some of the cars have been featured in previous films in the Fast and Furious series. And the first of which is this 1970 Dodge Charger, driven by one of the lead characters, Dominic Toretto, who's actually been in most of the films in the series. And it's an impressive looking car. We first saw this in the Fast and Furious series in the first film, where Toretto infamously flipped it off a semi-truck, hitting the front of it and doing a big barrel roll in the air. And it's pretty much lived in film history as one of the most iconic film cars ever since. And basic interior, because this has been stripped out as much as possible to make it as light as possible. So it actually only weighs 3,187 pounds, which is lighter than the standard car, which is despite this having more power, while obviously having a supercharger and roll cage and whatnot. So but let's see what this car can do when we get out onto the open road. Right, so for each car in this car pack, we're going to go on this drag strip, see what we can do before we hit the speed camera, then we'll listen to the car for a little bit, and then we'll talk about it some more. So let's see what this icon can do before we hit the speed camera, and then we'll do what I just said. So this had a really good drag scene in the first film, and it's been in countless scenes ever since, and as you can see, it is pretty sharpish in a straight line. 172 miles an hour there, which is pretty good, and that should be no surprise given all of the power it's got. But first, let's listen to it, and then we'll talk about it some more. Ooh, if I don't slide out. So as you'd expect with such a large supercharger, that does kind of dominate the whole noise of the car, but the V8 still does sound good. And it's pretty impressive in terms of power as well. 980 horsepower and 980 pounds-feet of torque from its 7-litre V8 supercharged engine. 0 to 60 is dealt with in 3.072 seconds. 0 to 100 is dealt with in 5.559 seconds. And it can go to a total speed of 221 miles an hour, which is really rather quite impressive for a car of this age. But obviously it has been heavily modified to not only deal with all that extra power and torque, as that is more than twice what it had originally, but also obviously to deal with the extra acceleration and speed. So handling wise, it's actually fairly good. It does feel really rather planted and direct, and it's got a good gearbox. It's rear-wheel drive only, and it just feels like a well-sorted machine, while also being really rather fun to drive as well. So on the whole, I really do like this car. It's an icon of the film series for a reason, because it not only looks great but also has featured in many iconic scenes. So that's the first car in the car pack. Just quickly show you one neat thing is the blower on the supercharger opens up, and as you can see as well, it's also spinning as well. So nice little bit of a detail there. So let's move on to the second car. So here's the second car. It's a 1973 Datsun 240Z, which is driven by a new character to the series, Isabel Neves. And it's the only Japanese car that we actually have in this car pack. Obviously the Japanese cars though have heavily featured in the series in past films, but only the one from the film here. Not sure if there were other Japanese cars in the film or not. It has been a while since I've seen it, but it is an impressive looking car, either because of the turbocharger sticking out the bonnet or the really rather nice wide fenders. But we've never had a 70s Datsun 240Z or Z car in general in a Forza game before. Hell, we've not even had one from the 80s either, but still, it's nice to have it. And this is more of a drift vehicle than a drag car, because as you can see, it's got a massive handbrake handle on it, which is what you need for when you're drifting, because you want to get between your gear lever and your handbrake as quickly as possible, so that's why it's so tall. And yeah, nicely done interior overall. Looks kind of stripped out. You got a roll cage in it as well if you so need it. But yeah, it's a general look of the car on the outside that is kind of impressive, to be honest. I really do like the look of it. I like the wheels. Oh, controller disconnected there for some reason. I like the wheels, and yeah, being a 1970s Datsun, it does look pretty good as well. Always been a fan of the look of these cars with their long bonnet and short rear end, and yeah, with all of the extras that I've done to this, only looks all the better. So yeah, it's also the lightest car out of this car pack at £2,661. So even though it's got the second to worst amount of horsepower, it's by no means a slouch. So let's get out there and see what it can do. So yeah, with this being more of a drift car than a drag racer, it doesn't have the most amount of power here, but still it is a pretty powerful car. So let's see what it can do in a straight line, and then we'll listen to the car, and then we'll talk about it some more. So yeah, it's got the highest revving engine out of any car in this car pack at 8,000 RPM, which I guess is no surprise, being a drift car. You know, drift cars tend to have high revving engines to make the most of their engines overall, or the power. And yeah, 162 mile an hour there, which is pretty good. And yeah, so let's just listen to it some more, and then we'll talk about it. So even though it is a drift car, as you can see, it's easily holding a good slide there, and that's from me, who's probably the worst drifter ever. It's still a good handling car outside of what it's able to do in terms of drifting. It doesn't seem to have the best brakes though, to be honest. I have outbraked myself quite easily. Not the highest rates of speed ever with this car, but still, acceleration wise it's also pretty good, as yeah, it's got 737 horsepower, 590 pounds-feet of torque from a 2.6 litre turbocharged inline 6. But in the movie itself, in terms of, you know, actually using it in the film, it's got a Chevy V8 which had about 640 horsepower. But as in terms of the actual, you know, car in the film's world, this is the engine it actually has. And yeah, 0 to 60 is also dealt with in 3.869 seconds. 0 to 100 is dealt with in 7.267 seconds, and it will go into a top speed of 214 mile an hour even. So yeah, not quite as quick as the Charger, but given the massive power difference, to be only 7 mile an hour slower at the top end is fairly impressive. But yeah, this is at the end of the day more of a drifter than a racer or a drag racer. So yeah, and at that it is pretty damn good. It's even able to show me off to the drift skills. So yeah, it's clearly a well sorted car in that regard. And yeah, like I said, I do like the look of the car as well on top of all of that. So yeah, this might not be the most powerful car or the most impressive in terms of straight line performance, but as a as a car that can not only race normally, but it's also reasonably good in a straight line. And yeah, it's also a pretty damn good drifter on top of all of that. So yeah, but nonetheless, let's get on to the third car in this car pack. So this is the third car in the car pack, and it is a 2022 Dodge Charger Hellcat Red Eye wide body, easily the longest car name in this car pack. And it's another car driven by Dominic Toretto in lieu of his older Dodge Charger. And yeah, an older version of this car was also used in Fast and Furious 9, but it's had real good use in Fast X. And yeah, looks really impressive. I do love the look of the wide body kit on this car, either due to the splitters or the wider arches or the nice rear spoiler. Good diffuser there at the bottom as well. Yeah, just does really look the part, and it's also practical as well because it has, you know, reasonable space in the back still. You know, those rear seats haven't been ripped out. Even still has a decent sized boot. And to be honest, modifications overall in terms of interior have been quite light. Just looks like the original seats have been ripped out for these lighter, you know, stronger ones. But everything else looks fairly standard, to be honest. Looks like not very much work has been put into it, but still, the outside looks as good as it does. That's where a lot of the work typically goes with these kind of cars. So yeah, impressive in that regard. So let's get out onto the open road and see what it can do. So like with the older Charger, this has a massive supercharger on its 7-litre V8, which again is like the older Charger, but this has 1,000 horsepower and 950 pounds-feet of torque, which is obviously quite a lot. Slightly less in terms of torque, but 20 extra horsepower over the older Charger. So in terms of straight line performance, this is actually pretty good. So yeah, let's see what it can do. Now this has an 8-speed gearbox, so it flies through its gears to make the most of its horsepower and torque. And yeah, like the older Charger, it is also rear-wheel drive. And like with that older Charger, the supercharger pretty much dominates the experience, although it's only able to get up to 160 before we hit the speed count, which is obviously not that fast. But yeah, let's hear what it sounds like, and then we'll talk about it some more. So yeah, I hope you can hear these cars over this dust storm that we've got going on, but yeah, regardless, this doesn't feel quite as planted as the older Charger, probably because it weighs quite a fair bit more. It weighs more than 1,400 pounds extra at 4,591 pounds, whereas obviously the older Charger weighs 3,187 pounds, so yeah, that is quite a substantial amount more. Obviously that's a little bit extra in the way of power, but yeah, 20 extra horsepower is not going to make much of a difference when you weigh that much extra. But still, the acceleration is pretty good. 0 to 60 is dealt with in 3.573 seconds. 0 to 100 comes in at 6.671 seconds, and it goes to a top speed of 230 miles an hour. So the top speed is actually better than the older Charger, but the acceleration is worse due to all of that extra weight. And like I said, the handling isn't quite as good either. It does like to oversteer quite a lot, and yeah, because of that extra weight, the braking isn't as good, and it's just not quite as responsive. I do like the car overall in terms of the way it looks and whatnot, but yeah, it's by no means as well sorted as the older car is, and maybe that's because that car had so many modifications added onto it, whereas this does come across a lot more like a stock vehicle with minor changes. But regardless, yeah, you'd expect the older car to be the worst one of the two, but that's just not the case with this. But still, it's a good car in terms of how it looks and sounds, but outside of that, there isn't much else to really enjoy. Nonetheless, so let's get on to the fourth vehicle in this car pack. So here's the fourth car in the car pack. So this is the villain's car in the car pack, and it is driven by Dante Reyes, and it's a 1966 Chevrolet Impala Super Sport. So we've only ever had from the 60s the 64 Impala Super Sport, but personally I love the look of this car, and I do prefer the look of this car overall, because through the life of a car in America, even per generation, they went through facial changes and the like over the course of a few years. So yeah, looks wise it does look significantly better than the 2-year-older version of this car, and yeah, I love the look of the colour as well, and yeah, just the car in general just looks great, to be honest. Although obviously the looks wise, most of it is stock. It only really looks like the wheels have been changed and maybe the bonnet, but everything else is pretty much stock by the looks of things. What isn't stock though is what's inside, and yeah, you've got a roll cage, you've got a mostly stripped out interior, you've got a bunch of extra dials, you've got your oil down there, your fuel and your water, and you've got a massive rev counter on the dashboard, and then you've got, looks like a load of buttons. You've got your start, your ignition, your fuel pump on, water pump on. Don't know what the other two are, but yeah, clearly are important to some regard. But this has the coolest thing in the world, and that is a sideways speedometer. So yeah, there is that. So yeah, but still, I love the look of the car, and that is the main thing with this. But still, it's not the lightest of vehicles that we've seen on this car pack, but it is the second lightest at 3,104 pounds. So given all of the power that it's got, yeah, this makes this pretty sharpish in a straight line. But let's get out of there and see how sharpish it is on the open road. So this has the most power out of any car in this car pack at 1,109 horsepower and 952 pounds-feet of torque, and that's because it has a gigantic 10.4 litre naturally aspirated V8 engine, being one of the largest engines on any car in this game, quite frankly. So as you'd expect, in terms of straight line performance, it's actually pretty damn sharpish. So let's see what it can do. No doubt that this has drag tyres on it because of the way that it launches, because it is at the end of the day still rear wheel drive. But unfortunately, despite all of that power, it's kind of hindered by the fact it only has a 3-speed gearbox, as you can see. It means it only tops out about 162, 163 miles an hour, which is a bit of a shame. But like, that is at the end of the day something you can change if you so wish. But yeah, that's what makes it as quick as it is up into that speed, is because it only has a 3-speed gearbox. So yeah, let's listen to it some more and then we'll talk about it. Yeah, quite a sizable engine, and it revs quite highly as well for a V8 at 7,000 RPM. But it is a bit of a handful in terms of handling, as yeah, those drag tyres might well offer a lot of grip off the line, but they offer little in the way of grip when it comes to the steering, especially in terms of understeer. There's quite a lot of that, and it is quite easy to let the rear end step out, which is again a bit of a shame. But I love the look of the car. The straight line performance up until 162 mile an hour is pretty damn good, as it can do 0 to 60 in 2.971 seconds, 0 to 100 in 5.474 seconds, and like as you can see, it can do up to 162 miles an hour. So yeah, up to 162, there's no doubt in my mind that this would beat every other car in this car pack. But yeah, that lack of top speed really does hinder it somewhat, but not enough for me to hate this car, to be honest, because I just love the look of the car, and the fact it's got such a large engine is something, you know, at the end of the day you can gloat about regardless of the top speed. So yeah, and I guess at the end of the day the top speed is kind of in keeping with what other cars over the time could do, which yeah, typically wasn't all that high in terms of top speed. But yeah, as per usual, when it comes to a villain car, it is the coolest car in the film. So yeah, there is that going for it as well. So yeah, let's nonetheless though get on to the fifth and final car in this car pack. So this is the fifth and final car in the car pack. It's the 2022 Flip Car 2.0. So we saw a flip car in one of the previous films, but this has been heavily overhauled over that car, and yeah, it's a mightily impressive looking piece of engineering, and yeah, obviously quite a lot of effort has gone into it for what is at the end of the day a one-off for a film. So yeah, it looks impressive. It's got 3 axles, it's got a massive rear spoiler, it's got the engine way up the back, and you've also got a really rather nice cockpit as well. And obviously all of this is bespoke. It's not something that's going to ever be done again, or at least not again for any other film, I imagine. I highly anticipate that they've kept this car in working condition for it to have it to return in some form again. But yeah, it's nice that they've put that level of effort into a car. That's probably one reason why the film itself cost $340 million to make. Unfortunately, you can't use the flip ramp aspect on this game because that would be unfair to the competition, but still, it does look the part. So let's get out onto the open road and see what this car can do. So with this hardly being the lightest of cars in this car pack at 4,150 pounds, and it only having 700 horsepower and 725 pound-feet of torque from its naturally aspirated 7 litre V8, which makes it the least powerful car in this car pack, it's no speed machine in a straight line. But let's nonetheless see what it can do before we get the speed camera, and then we'll talk about it some more. So yeah, because obviously it's not got that much in the way of power, it's got a lot of weight, and those tyres at the rear are as large as they are. Yeah, it's no speed machine. To aggravate that, it only has a 3-speed gearbox as well, much like the Impala does, but that Impala obviously has less in the way of weight and drag tyres. But yeah, let's hear what the car sounds like first, and then we'll talk about it some more. yeah, pretty good sounding engine, to be honest. But obviously the party piece with this, outside of the flip ramp thing, is the fact that all 3 axles do turn to some degree, which, yeah, is a first for a Forza game. Usually we have had 2 axles work before, but yeah, this is the first to have all 3 working, and yeah, that is mightily impressive in terms of adding that kind of thing to the physics of this game. And yeah, it does look impressive when you're slinging it around a corner that you've got all 3 axles turning at certain angles. But yeah, it's by no means a car that I feel like is going to be all that usable on this game. But still, in terms of acceleration, it's not as bad as it might sound given the amount of weight it's got and the lack of power. 0 to 60 is dealt with in 3.484 seconds. 0 to 100 is dealt with in 7.9 seconds flat. But it is the slowest at the top end at 161 miles an hour. So yeah, that is a bit of a shame. I would like this car more if it was faster, but I guess if it was faster it would probably be even more uncontrollable. But as it stands, the car is reasonably good in terms of handling and braking. And obviously it's good at getting around sharp corners given all of the turnability it's got. Now this car in the film can actually crab walk, but unfortunately that would have made the car handle too poorly on this game if it was able to do that, so that's why it's not in this game. But still, it's an impressive looking car, and it's certainly a car that you can show off, but it's more about what it looks like more than what it can do at the end of the day with this car. So yeah, unfortunately it's my least favourite car out of the car pack. But let's look at the car pack overall and round it up. So all of the cars are under the Fast and Furious moniker. So yeah, my favourite is going to be the Impala Super Sport, purely because of the way it looks, and yeah, the acceleration and the massive engine. But as you can see, the handling and braking isn't particularly great, and neither is the top speed obviously. Second favourite is the Charger, just because it's a really fun car to drive. It's far more planted than you expect. Braking and handling is fairly decent, but obviously the launch, acceleration and speed are pretty good as well. Third favourite is going to be the Charger SRT Hellcat. I know it's not the best handling car here, and it's obviously quite a heavy car, but stats wise it's a pretty good all-rounder. Braking, launch, acceleration, handling are all fairly solid, and the top speed is obviously the best car here. Then I go for the Datsun. It's a pretty fun car just to drive and drift around in, and the acceleration, handling and braking are fairly solid as well. Top speed is obviously good as well on top of that, but the launch is pretty poor, and yeah, it's by no means the most impressive looking car, even though I do like the look of it. And last is the flip car, purely just because it's not particularly useful on this game, and yeah, it's only really something to show off in terms of how it looks. But on the whole, I do really like this car pack. It's a bit on the expensive side. It's certainly more expensive than we've seen with other car packs on this game. Granted, we do have one extra car over the normal kind of car pack. Usually in these car packs we've had about 4 vehicles, whereas we obviously have 5 here. But like I said, I think this flip car is a bit useless in terms of its abilities on the game, so technically you could say we've only got 4, but still, regardless, it's worth getting, especially if you are into the Fast and Furious films and you do enjoy the cars that are in the films as well, which I certainly do. So that's why I bought this car pack, just because I am into the films and the cars that they use. So yeah, so in that essence it is a worthwhile car pack. But if you're not into the films, or these mad customizable vehicles, then it might not be quite up your alley. Nonetheless, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.